Alright, sorry about that. The last video had to be cut off just because YouTube restrictions, right? So anyways, we were going to go and see about the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. So we're going to go to Genesis 41, and we're going to look at a couple of the dreams there that Pharaoh had and the interpretation of it. So we see here in verse 17 of Genesis 41, it says, "And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears, and I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one, and the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he sheweth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall rise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt. And the famine shall consume the land, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass." So we see here, Pharaoh had his dream, or 2 dreams, a double dream, and Joseph was the one who God gave the interpretation to. And so we see here exactly what happened. And then Pharaoh set Joseph up to be the one to gather the food into the storehouse, and then during the 7 years of famine to dispense it. And so we're going to see what these 7 years represent. So remember, Joseph is a symbol of Christ, the grain is a symbol of the truth, and the storehouse is a symbol of the Bible. So when was the time that the grain was put into the Bible? And when did it switch from being put in to being taken out? So we're going to look here at a few statements. One good statement is from Matthew 11, verse 13. It says, "For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John." Then it goes on describing about John the Baptist being a great prophet. And so, what does this verse really mean? Matthew 11, verse 13. "For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John." Some take it to mean that after John the Baptist, there were no more prophets. However, this cannot be true in the light of the rest of the Bible, because Paul claims to have the prophetic gift. Also, you have John the Revelator, who clearly had the prophetic gift. And, all the apostles. And so, even Christ himself, the Bible calls a prophet. Now, obviously, he was also God made manifest in the flesh, but he came in the role of a prophet. So obviously this verse does not mean that John the Baptist was the last prophet. But it does say, for all the law, or all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. It's showing a division of time being before John and after John. And so what does this mean? In order to kind of understand this, I'm going to read another statement, and then we'll kind of go back and see how it fits together. This statement is from Great Controversy, page 341. It says, "Ministers and people declared that the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation were incomprehensible mysteries, but Christ directed his disciples to the words of the prophet Daniel concerning events to take place in their time, and said, Whoso readeth, let him understand." Matthew 24:15. And the assertion that the revelation is a mystery, not to be understood, is contradicted by the very title of the book, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Revelation 1, verse 1 through 3. Says the prophet, Blessed is he that readeth. There are those who will not read, the blessing is not for them. And they that hear, there are some also who refuse to hear anything concerning the prophecies, the blessing is not for this class, and keep those things which are written therein. Many refuse to heed the warnings and instructions contained in the revelation. None of these can claim the blessing promised. All who ridicule the subject of the prophecy and mock at the symbols here solemnly given, all who refuse to reform their lives and to prepare for the coming of the Son of Man, will be unblessed. In view of the testimony of inspiration, how dare men teach that the revelation is a mystery beyond the reach of human understanding? It is a mystery revealed, a book opened. The study of the revelation directs the mind to the prophecies of Daniel, and both present most important instruction given of God to men concerning events to take place at the close of this world's history. So we see here very clearly spelled out that the revelation is there to be understood. And so, this kind of gets to the whole point of this study here anyways, saying that we can understand the things of Revelation, we can understand the subject of the 144,000. However, dealing with this specific point of Matthew 11, verse 13, it's telling us here that the revelation, which was after John the Baptist, was given for the purpose of revealing. It was not a mystery. And so what we have here is that before this, the prophecies of the Old Testament were somewhat of a mystery. You look at the book of Ezekiel, even today it's a mystery to many, many people. So you see a division between the Old Testament time and the New Testament. The time of the Old Testament, before John the Baptist, was when they were taking truth, or God was giving truth to his prophets, to be put into the Bible. And so you see at that point, you see Isaiah. God just went to Isaiah, gave him a vision. And Isaiah took it, he wrote down the vision, and that was it. And the people at that time, Moses told them what their test was for the prophets. And the prophets even then were subject to the prophets, but they were being given new revelations of truth, something that had not been given before. However, in the New Testament, you see that they start revealing the things of the Old Testament. You see, actually, if you read the New Testament, it's constantly referring to and quoting the Old Testament. And even there, you should notice another thing, that the New Testament is not bringing forward anything completely new. It's just revealing the Old Testament. Everything taught in the New Testament can be found clearly in the Old. And so, it's just brought in a new and even clearer light in the New Testament. So that's what this verse really means. Matthew 11:13. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. Showing that that was the time when the prophets and the law were prophesying or being placed and acted out in such a way that they were foretelling the future. Now, after John the Baptist was when the revelation of the prophecies of the Old Testament and a revelation of the law was being accomplished. And it's still being accomplished. And, one evidence for that is that we still don't have the entire Old Testament revealed to us. So this is showing us the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. Okay? Remember, the plenty was when they were putting the truth into the storehouse. So you see, Moses was the first one to write the first 5 books of the Bible. And then, after that came the, judges and the prophets and so on and so forth. And so that would be the 7 years of plenty, putting the truth into the storehouse. The 7 years of famine, remember, according to the story of Joseph, that's when they started eating up all the food or digesting the truths of the Old Testament. And so that's why we see New Testament revealing the Old. And so, something that I'd like to point out here is that according to the dream, if we go to Genesis 41, verse 21, it says, And when they had eaten them up, being the 7 ill-favored kine, eating up the 7 fat-fleshed kine, it says, And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And even in the interpretation from Joseph, it says, And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall be consumed, or shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of the famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And so what does this mean? Well, as far as I can see, the only thing that it could really mean is that in the New Testament time, we are to completely exhaust and use up the Old Testament, that at the end it can be said that there is no reserves left over. Just like the ill-favored kine, had no fat reserves left in their body after they had finished eating up completely the fat-fleshed kine, or the 7 years of plenty. Likewise, we will be completely understanding the things of the Old Testament by the end of the New Testament era, meaning it's completely eaten up and we have nothing left on us, no fat reserves, it's completely digested, understood. And so, that's just a main point that I think is important to understand, as far as if we can understand the subject of the 140,000 and is important. We're supposed to be eating up this word, so that's, we have here, we could put 7 years being Old Testament and 7 years being New Testament. And so this is plenty here, and this is famine. Okay, only a couple more minutes left in this video, but let's see here. I'm going to read a statement, just one quick sentence from Review and Herald, March 9, 1905, paragraph 4. And it says, Let us strive with all the power that God has given us to be among the 144,000. Now, let us consider, if we were to strive to be something that we knew nothing about, how could we strive to become it? So obviously we must understand the 140,000 in order to strive to be among them. It's just a thought to consider, as well as the last verse of John. Go and read it. Basically, the conclusion of that is that everything in the Bible is so important because God could have given us a lot more writing, but He only gave us a small amount, showing that everything that He did give is important to have. So this is the end of time. God bless.